And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, want to give a big shout out to everybody that's a member on our fabulous Lakers Fast Break rookie membership program, starting with Samir, JSJ, Kurt Affair, Darren, Sports Baby, Richard, Bloodhound, and Xbox. Truly appreciate you joining us. And you could become a member too and get those special shout outs, emojis, badges, and more just by going ahead and putting down $2.99 a month, just $2.99 a month to become a member today for the Lakers Fast Break. I love Joe's answer. What the hell is this? It's called a podcast, Joe. I know you've never been on one before, but it's called technology. So there you go, Joe. We'll get you in the speed of things. Yes, I know you're still back in the horse and buggy days, but yeah, it's okay. All right. But also as well, speaking of Joe, he is, of course, the guy behind Simblades, SimBladesWithY.com, and also as well, of course, he's Ox1947 at LakersBall.com. Our good friends, Empire Jeff TV, John McCallion channel, Lakers in 5, Daniel Barry Sports Highlights, plus also as well the Lakerholics crew who could not agree on a time this weekend. Hopefully they'll be back next weekend. Lakerholics.com there. And then, of course, also as well, John Costa, whose channels we grace right now, Clutch Talk and Lakers Corner. He is always working hard to provide content for you out there, so please support him today. And speaking of supporting great channels and also great people like Stone Hansen at report_court as well, and the Legend 350, please go ahead and support all these great places, including my guest stuff today. Go ahead and make sure you do. And also, please, we're still trying to struggle to get over 1,800 subscribers, so it'd be great if you could subscribe today to get the latest notifications on when we go live on the air with the latest Lakers Fast Break podcast. Alan, the reason why Alan's asking for those in audio, why can't Joe ever ask a question nicely? I think you just answered your own question, Alan, because nice and Joe are very far apart, and we'll just go ahead and leave it at that. But NBA observations, I had some time because unfortunately the Cosmos I was recording did have some technical problems because Josh, my cohort in crime, unfortunately, he had some weather-related internet outages in his area. So Alfred buzzed on by and said, hey, we need to talk about the most important training camp battles coming up in the NBA. So here today, he is back. He is one of our NBA experts. It is the man indeed. It is, of course, at Alfred Esmond on Twitter. He is weaning himself off the Orlando Magic Daily.com. So he's working more on the baseball thing, but he is always keeping a keen eye on the NBA. It is Alfred Esmond. Alfred, great to have you here. Joe, Alan always has a problem with you. Have you not been watching the chat for the past 2 years? I'll leave it at that. But Alan, great to have you back, my friend. Thought we were going to do this on Monday. Still glad to do it today. Legend 350, if you're listening out there, if you can't join us today, we'll go ahead and do it tomorrow, my friend, and hear your thoughts. But always great to have you back talking the NBA, Alfred.
Thank you, Gerald, for having me. Sorry, by the way, I was just itching to get into these training camp battles. I needed to do it now, okay. Right this instant.
There you go. So, yeah, right. and far be it for me to stop you from doing that. So we bring you on this show. Although I heard you're cheating on us by delving into other podcasting realms, but it's okay. We know you need to get your face out there in front of the people. So yes, on all facets of the sports world. So it's okay. We'll allow you to do that just a little while longer. But my friend, always great to have you here. So it is training camp around the corner, coming up soon for a couple of the teams that are going abroad. They have to come into training camp a little bit sooner. So it is coming up around the corner now that it's September 15th, and National Heritage Day, National Heritage Month starts today. So wishing all of our Hispanic friends out there truly all the best here in the States. But that set aside, it's just a few days before training camp. the Lakers did officially sign Christian Coloco, or they've come to an agreement on it, still pending the NBA's fitness program to make sure that he's okay with his blood clots issue. But he did sign to a two-way deal with the Lakers. He's agreed to one, I should say. I don't know. They haven't stated who they're cutting yet from the two-way plans because they have three people already on two-way plans. They have to do that. So in and of itself is a position battle for the Lakers. But we'll start off with the Lakers, my friend. Is there a position battle that you think needs to be focused on for the Lakers training camp coming up?
Well, I certainly think the depth at that center spot is, with the recent signing, is, quite intriguing to say the least. If you look beyond, obviously Anthony Davis is the big name. His position is not up for grabs by any stretch, obviously. But you look around the position in other ways. I mean, you have Christian Wood in there. You could throw Rui Hachimura into the mix, Jackson Hayes, quite even. It's just a lot of uncertainty. I think there's a lot of spots to fill as far as where, in which way, and where those players fit into that depth spot. I think that's the biggest and most key one, really. You also, I think, if you're the Lakers, kind of, you're getting LeBron on the tail end of his career. Not that LeBron spot's up for grab, but the conversation, I think, shifts to, you look sort of beyond, his time in LA as to where other players sit. This includes like a Max Christie, even a Dalton Connect, not just to evaluate where he'd fit in his sort of minutes. So I think it's more of, I don't know if there's necessarily a ton of like battles, so to speak, when it comes to you're going to get on the roster and whatnot. Obviously there will be with two-way guys, but I think, as far as how many minutes these guys are going to get, a lot of that can be determined for the Lakers during this training camp period.
Joe, I know you're a big guy. I'm 6'2", 220, and you tower over me. I think you are 6'4". You say you're 6'3". I think you are 6'4". What, 250, 60, 70? But I think Allen, I just saw his profile pic. Allen, I think, still can match up size with you. But I am sending you the link, Joe, and we'll see what happens. You guys can go ahead and have your virtual slap fights you want. Oh, that's fine. All well and good. Oh, that's funny. Why are you looking at my chest anyways, Joe? Calling each other popcorn chest.
Popcorn chest. That's a new one. I have not heard that ever. I mean, that is a new term. I like it.
Yeah. I will say, though, the one battle, or will it be a battle? Because the Lakers have so many depth issues, which I think a lot of people were praising the heavens that the fact that we got a Christian Coloco, who, again, as much as I thought he would be pretty decent coming out of the draft, has not hit his only year of doing it. It's his rookie year, mind you. So I don't want to go too much on the kid, but it wasn't too impressive, to say the least. And he is a second-round draft choice. Let's just put things in perspective there. So we don't know what to expect because he is on a two-way deal right now. I don't know yet, and we'll let you know out there who is the one who gets waived off of that two-way deal from Armel Traore, Colin Castleton, and I think Hinson are the three two ways right there. So we'll see which one gets the axe here sooner rather than later, most likely. We'll let you know. But again, it's all pending the NBA physical. But the depth issues are still a problem. And as I've said on this show, and I know you've heard me, after you get past number 5, the depth issues for the Lakers seems like it goes down like a crater. It's like the Grand Canyon as far as where the depth issues go and the uncertainty therein. I think what it comes down to is who is going to get the minutes off the bench as far as that backup shooting guard or small forward. They could play realistically with each other, but I have a feeling there is going to be a competition between Max Christie and Dalton Connect. That, to me, is probably the most interesting battle right now. The starting lineup, for better or for worse, I think for worse, because I think Rui and also Austin Reeves should be reserves, but they don't. Who could take their place right now? No one. So you're really stuck between a rock and a hard place there. So I really think the most intriguing battle is for minutes between Max Christie and Dalton Connect.
I did too. I mean, you obviously you just gave Max Christie a healthy lump sum of money and you had a great player and Dalton Connect in the draft kind of fall into your lap as he fell based on where his draft stock was going into it. So you have two guys where you got them in different ways, but you got them in ways where it seems like you're committed to them, or you feel like you got a steal out of the other. Committed, I mean Max Christie, a steal in Dalton Connect. I think, maybe, again, the key with Dalton Connect is defense, and I'll extend that to Max Christie as well. I think defensively, when they do their defensive stuff in training camp, that could be a big telling for what Reddick wants to do with those two as far as their minutes go. I think that's the way I at least would look at it. If you could get good enough defense out of Max Christie, I'll leave it to the chat, you, Gerald, and Joe, on whether you think you can get that or not. But if you can get that out of him, then you could see him take a good enough amount of minutes, the second unit, if you will, off the bench amount of minutes. And then even, I don't know as far as, room for Dalton Connect, but he could get that too if his defense is good enough. So I think defensively, evaluating those two guys will be big in telling who gets the most amount of minutes between the two, or just how many minutes they get flat out.
Once again, it is Alfred Esmond at Alfred Esmond on Twitter, talking about the most interesting training camp battles right here on the NBA Observations. One of the more interesting rotation plays for me when I looked at it and I studied it, to me, is in New York. Getting in Bridges, they're set as far as the number of quality wings, the quality players. They have a good rotation. If Robinson stays healthy, they could really have a nice rotation from player 1 to player 7. 7-man rotation, which is going to be probably one of the best in the NBA. But
oh yeah,
if they didn't all go to Villanova, I would say there'd normally be a problem for DiVincenzo, who did so outstanding, saying, hey, buddy, I know you really helped us out in the playoffs. I know you carried us at times in the playoffs, even when Brunson struggled, but I'm going to have you come off the bench with Josh Hart. And Josh Hart still is like, didn't he play like 48 minutes a game for like several straight games in one of the series? Yeah. And it's just, hey, buddy, we're going to have you come off the bench because we've got some higher priced individuals. And the Randall question is now growing day by day. And the New York media is not going to make it easier. So the position battles for there is who goes where and how the minutes are laid out, especially with the way Tom Thibodeau plays his guys.
Yeah, another guy in the equation I like a lot for them is Miles McBride. I thought he was pretty valuable within their rotation at times as well. So that's another question you throw into the mix for Thibodeau. And I mean, you look at it, I think you really have some flexibility, at least at the start of the season, where you put Bridges. I think, I get it, New York fandom, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But if you're being realistic about it, I think you have some flexibility in the month of October, November, where Bridges exactly fits in. You could start him some games. You could have him come off the bench at the 6 or 7 spot afterward.
Expensive bench player.
Right. Yeah. So that's the big thing too. That's why, I think you start out starting him, just to see. And I honestly think it works. And I think you play with it off of that. And then I think the next 3, honestly, as far as minutes go, are, like you said, DiVincenzo, Hart, and then McBride. That's a lot of guards. And I guess the next big man they would throw in behind Randall or Robinson would be Precious, probably.
Did they re-sign him? I know he's on a restricted.
Let me see.
He still, as a restricted, as far as to my knowledge, has not agreed to terms with them yet, as of yet. But he is restricted. They do reserve the rights to go ahead and sign him if they so choose. And I think they will probably clear it up because they haven't alleviated themselves. Jericho Sims has not stood out. So that could be a question in their training campus. Who backs up Mitchell Robinson?
It'll be huge. I mean, because I'm looking at their depth chart and I'm like, wow, that's not a lot of options, at the big beyond Randall and Robinson. So that's, I think, honestly, out of all the battles, so to speak, I know that guard room's a little packed, but I think that's going to be easier to figure out, especially with Bridges' contract, like you said, Gerald, as opposed to what are you going to do with the big men you have? Do you go Sims over Achua? I mean, I don't see it how it works that way, assuming they hold on to Precious and, with their situation that they have right now, it seems like you kind of have to do that. I mean, just to have enough of a big man room to begin with. So I think that's going to be interesting. The Sims and Precious battle for New York, to say the least.
Who is the first team on your list, and which is the first position battle that is really stuck out to you? Wanted to make sure I got that before we get Joe, who just came in.
Yeah. One of the teams when I was looking into this, just because, outside of Orlando, I don't really have a good idea of who does what, was the Clippers. We talked about it during our off-season stuff when Legend was with us as well. They have, their hands tied and are chained in the tank like Houdini when it comes to the situation with their team and the trade they made with SGA and stuff. So it's key to see who exactly they could throw in beyond, the starting lineup they have. Obviously, I think you have some solid. You have the initial depth is guys like Chris Dunn, Norman Powell, Batum, Mo Bamba. They brought in Kai Jones, which I guess for what it's worth is slightly a little intriguing just because you need, depth beyond just the second unit that you have. Kai Jones was a slashing athletic tall guard that, was delivering crazy dunks and whatnot left and right. He skipped a year of playing in the NBA, so that's the major concern he has. But, obviously that's, the Clippers trying to bring people in to evaluate who they are. The other name I saw, Kevon Harris, not familiar to anyone watching this probably.
Is Primo still on that team?
I believe. Let me see.
Because
I don't see him.
Okay, so
I don't see him.
They let him go. So all right.
Yes.
Or he might be on the G League team for them or whatnot. So okay.
Right. That's what I was. Right. I was going to mention too. The other name, Kevon Harris, was a very good G Leaguer with the Ulsa-Cola Magic. He even got some playing time in the NBA a little bit when the Magic were hurt and they needed guys to come in and whatnot. So that's another guard, to throw into the mix. I have to mention, too, Cam Christie. Max Christie's brother, by the way, everybody, if you didn't know. He, is also in that room, so you got to see where he's at. He's a very good college player for what it's worth, in my opinion. So it's worthwhile to look at him. I think there's battles left and right on this Clippers team when you go beyond the second unit of depth they have. And, it's a second unit that's not necessarily strong. With the likes of Batum, Bamba, and Dunn. But you really just kind of have to start getting creative based on where they're at as a team. So that's the thing I looked at with them.
Joe is here. Joe Sorrell, aka Ox1947 at LakersBall.com. Plus also as well, he is the mastermind behind Simblades, SimBladesWithAY.com. Joe, the topic is the most intriguing, interesting NBA position battles in training camp upcoming. What sticks out to you for the Lakers? I just posed out there between who will get the main backup minutes between Christie and Connect. Did you have a Lakers one in mind or somewhere else? It was, intriguing you or piquing your interest.
I'm curious to see how Cam Whitmore gets used in Houston.
I think very smart, very good.
I think they're going to start pushing a little bit now because Houston's been playing the lottery game and using the rebuild moniker long enough. I think now this year is going to be the year where they're like, look, we need to start getting some playoff appearances. And I'm wondering, I want to see what young player on that team is going to emerge. You have the Van Fleets there. You have, you can call Dylan Brooks a veteran leader there if you want. Obviously, Sengun is coming into his own, and then Amin Thomas is 1 year in, and we're gonna see if he jumps a little bit. But I want to see what Udoka does this year. I want to see a jump. I'm looking at this from an NBA observer, not a Laker fan. I want to see where they go, and of course, Steven Adams being an issue with his injuries, he is going into a last year's contract. Maybe he might summon some strength to where he can play an almost full season and contribute. And because when he is healthy, he's a big contributor. So that's
Jalen Green, because remember they haven't committed yet to Jalen Green and Sengun on long-term contracts.
And I'm pretty confident they're gonna commit to at least Sengun.
Right.
That's a player that they absolutely have to have and need. And then they're going to need their young guys in the last few years to start playing like guys that are seasoned now. You just can't. They can't afford to be. Well, let's try to ease them in. No, you got to let these guys run and see if these guys can make at least a play-in run. But they very well could be there. You know, the NBA is about young players, like Stu Lance always says, and it's about skilled new players. And Udoka is a good coach. So if you have young, skilled, and a good coach, when have you ever seen a team that's young, skilled, and has a good coach not compete? I don't know. I don't remember any teams like that. And I know it's a rarity, but I don't remember teams that don't play well when they have those three elements. So I think Houston, the only thing that could stop it is injuries, obviously, but I always base all my observations on a team that's not injured, because you can't just go, well, someone's going to get injured in December and then someone's going to get injured in January. You can't do that, even if it's something that happens all the time. But Houston is definitely a team I'm going to be watching. And I will say this, it does have a little bit of a Laker thing to it as well, because if those guys play very well, it's just another team the Lakers have to watch out for and compete against for those last probably playoff spots.
And the thing is, the guys, is the fact that they had that late run. Now, whether or not they played every team, that every team had interest in doing it or not, as far as tanking or what have you, they still won a ton of games toward the end of the season and finished at 500. So they're looking to take the next step, Joe, especially with the kind of roster. And we've talked about before how envious we are as Lakers fans of the kind of depth that they have in youth and at the actual right spot you need. This league has been now built, guys, for wings. And in doing so, it looks like Houston has a pretty good plan. Whether or not any of these guys break out into superstar status is still yet to remain to be seen, Alfred. But yeah, your thoughts on what Joe was saying about Houston. But I really think that at least they're giving themselves a good shot to compete with all that depth they have at the 2 and the 3.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned Reed Shepherd yet. And I think he's a very interesting part of this Cam Whitmore thing happening, because it's almost like, you guys are so high on him. I'm high on him too. He shot lights out.
I saw him in person, League. Alfred.
Right.
He cover your ears. He really burned Dalton Connect on the defensive end. So
yeah. And I mean, you look at, I saw him too. I told you this too. I saw him Kentucky, Tennessee, same thing. I mean, the same thing happened there. But it makes this guard room even loaded, because I guess, you think about shooting guard wise, who they have. You have Jalen Green starting, and then you have two options between Whitmore or Shepherd, behind that. So I think it's important for Ime to, this training camp, to see what minutes are going to go to who, whether it be Shepherd or Whitmore. I guess Whitmore has the experience advantage to him. Obviously, he's not a rookie anymore, but I think it's going to be quickly figured out during training camp and then extend into preseason games what exactly they're going to do with that. It also makes, I think, Jalen Green's contract extension talk a little more interesting. Like, do you want to? I like what Joe said, and I was on this too, about giving Şengün the money first, because center's that premium position that everyone really needs. And although he has his flaws, he is good enough to stick there for the time being to compete for a play-in spot. And it's once you look at that, you're like, okay, well, with Jalen Green, are we committed enough to spend all this money on him when we have two guys behind him who may not be as good, but are productive enough to fill that hole? And if so, maybe teams are shopping and looking at Jalen Green, around the NBA. Other teams are looking into him. So it's really interesting, this Houston team. I think they're a team to watch. And again, we can see him become pretty competitive, because Joe said, good coach, young talent who produce, a team who was like that last year, the Orlando Magic. I saw it with my own eyes. You saw them compete, and take a huge step in the right direction. I think Houston could take a similar path, maybe not like a 5 seed in the West or anything, but certainly get to playing playoff basketball if all goes well. And that's a very interesting battle, actually. It's good that Joe brought that up. I like the Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore concept, happening during this training camp.
Once again, it is Alfred Esmond. Alfred Esmond on Twitter, plus also as well Joe Sorrell. We're talking NBA position battles to watch out for coming up because training camp is around the corner. We're getting closer, guys. We're getting closer. Joe, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you your thoughts. You had a really smart, and I'm going to give you a whole ton of credit on just on short notice, pointing out the Houston Rockets. I really like that pick. Your thoughts, though, on the Lakers, because I know that the fans want to hear, the audience wants to hear your thoughts. Is there one positional battle or rotational battle in your eyes that might be of keen interest for Lakers fans coming up?
Honestly, the only one I'm curious to see at the moment is Connect.
Mhm.
I kind of know what everyone else is going to be because I've seen him. There is a slight chance that Rui might be better than he was last year. I believe Austin Reeves is going to continue to play hard and play up to his capabilities and be dedicated. I think he's the only guy that played all 82 games last year, and these days you got to kind of pat people on the back for that.
I did want to mention though, real quick, Blake Hinson was just waived as the two-way player that Christian Coloco is replacing. So just
we were waiting on who the player was going to be, and breaking news: Blake Hinson was waived.
Yes,
there you go.
And this was an inevitability as soon as Christian Wood was to have had his secret surgery, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't know why there would be a secret about it. Just, it's Christian Wood. This isn't Kevin Durant or something. But it was quite obvious that the Lakers absolutely had to get a big before training camp because you just cannot have AD playing 40 to 42 minutes. It's just not going to work. And Christian's going to allow, I don't know if they'll ever play together, maybe in certain spots, but you have to have at least a couple of bigs that can spell AD. Otherwise, you just wouldn't make it. It's just not it wouldn't work. Jackson Hayes, will he improve from last year? I actually thought he played better than I thought he would last year. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it when it mattered, but that's not the place I put him in. I was fairly in that mode that I knew he wasn't capable of playing at that level. And when you know someone isn't good enough to play at a certain level, it's not going to be a disappointment when he can't. But he did serve a purpose during the regular season. He played minutes that didn't play a lot, but played minutes to where he could spell AD, and AD had one of his best and healthy seasons. So that part is good. And I'm hoping Christian can be that guy as well. The only problem is this team is going to still have issues rebounding the ball. If they do not rebound this year, because we've already seen what happens when everyone stays healthy and everyone hits their shots, which they did both last year, they couldn't rebound, and that was really ultimately what took them down. All the fluff that we've been pumping is offense, when in fact it's the grunge work that the Lakers don't do. And it's also difficult for the other, I guess you could sort of say 10, not 11, because AD does his work or does some of that work. When LeBron doesn't kind of play defense, it's hard, and he's the leader. You can't, it's a mental thing. A lot of the other guys are not likely to kind of go the extra mile either. And I'm not saying that we need LeBron to play hard on defense. I get it. He's going into his 22nd season. He needs to reserve his energy. I get that, but it still doesn't mean it's good for the greater good in terms of the players kind of being motivated to do the things that they need to do. And worse, there's a lot of guys that are not capable. It's not their fault. They're just not capable of doing that. So if I had to pick one, I want to see if this team can rebound based off of JJ Redick's coaching philosophy. If I have to guess on what that would be, is this team capable of guarding players like they do and still have enough energy to watch the ball? And will they run out of energy? Are they going to be in shape to do this? They have to be in much better shape than they've been probably ever in their lives. Can they do it? Now you look at somebody like Austin, you look at somebody like D'Angelo Russell, you look at someone like Rui, to some degree AD. These are still young players. LeBron is probably not going to do it, but I'd like to maybe think that the other four could. And then maybe somebody like Max Christie, somebody like Dalton Connect. Can those guys play team defense and individual defense and go after the ball and not get themselves stuck in terms of bad court balance? Because that all becomes an issue. That's why you usually have two guys kind of sitting back a little bit on offense, just in case, the team goes out on a good outlet pass or whatever. That's the difficult part about basketball, is how do you teach and how do you put together a roster that can do more than one thing? Within the last 5 years, the Lakers maybe had a couple of seasons where they were able to do that, but they haven't been able to do it consistently the last few years.
Alfred, let's get back to your list of position battles that you think need to be looked at the most as far as NBA fans are concerned. Your thoughts on what other team that you're looking at right now for a nice, interesting look at a NBA training camp position battle?
I'm going to go to my side of the country on the East Coast. I'm going to go up north to Philly for this next one. The battle I'm looking at with them, it's kind of you have to go a little deeper into their team, when you look at it, because I think your starting lineup's obviously set with who you have. I think you could get valuable minutes out of guys like Kyle Lowry, second off the bench. They have Andre Drummond, the back Joel Embiid for what it's worth. Not that he'll have to do that much if Embiid's healthy, but you have that to back him. I think you go deeper into the guard room, and there's two guys who are on the younger side who it'll be interesting to see where they fall, and that's rookie Jared McCain, and then that second-year guy, Ricky Council, the fourth. Both great college players, great McCain, obviously, great shooter in his own right. You look at Ricky Council, sound on defense, so I think how Jared McCain is on defense will be key, to where he gets put based on what Ricky Council can do. Ricky Council was right around 9 minutes a game, was I thought pretty sound on defense from what I heard from a lot of people. He didn't really shoot a ton. I don't think he was, a guy when Philly brought him off the bench that looked to hit a bunch of shots and stuff like that. I think they looked elsewhere like that, like an Eric Gordon, who they have coming off the bench at a guard. But I think the defensive, how you look at those two players, McCain and Council defensively, is going to be key. And I think in particular for McCain, we know what he could do with his shot. We saw it in school during the NCAA tournament for when Duke was in. He was lights out. I think really for McCain, it's defensively how he fits into this 76ers team that's going to determine where he is rotationally, to say the least.
Once again, it is Joe Soro, the guy behind Ox1947 at LakersBall.com, and of course, Simblade, SimbladesWorldwide.com, and Alfred Esmond on Twitter. I think a training camp battle or training camp rotation that you might need to focus on, Joe, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is in Miami, as far as how much stock, especially with what we saw in Dallas, as far as how they did with their rookie center, how much will Khalil Ware play early on? Do you pair him up with Bam? And is, Jimmy Butler going to be a key as far as him being traded or staying on the Miami Heat this season, Joe?
Well, Khalil Ware, I think, game can play with Bam. And again, you're in Miami. Spoelstra's a very good coach, and the Miami culture is intoxicating for young, talented players. They seem to thrive over there. They get a good idea of how they're supposed to play because the man on top demands it. And the Jimmy Butler situation is interesting. Jimmy Butler's the kind of talent right now that a team that's kind of on the cusp, whether it's, I would say more maybe could be a title team with him, just making that acquisition. I'm going to be seeing that might be the guy that someone gets and they go, okay, now we can maybe go go somewhere. And I've been thinking about which team would want him, and if they could get him. Can't go to Phoenix. Phoenix has nothing in terms.
He is also an individual, as Pat Riley has stated, that
True.
they need to see more of, and he has not been extended as of yet.
True, he is an individual, but Pat Riley and the Miami Heat are more about the community, and most NBA teams out there don't care about that. They just care about getting talent. So I'm sitting there and I was looking, who really needs Jimmy Butler to kind of go to that next step? I kept racking my brain. He can't go to. Obviously, he's not going to go back to Chicago. He's not going to go back to Minnesota. He's not going to go back to Philly. Phoenix is out of the question because they have nothing to throw back at Miami. The Lakers have apparently gotten a rumor that there's some interest there. I don't know if Pat Riley would want a 29 and 31 pick with what? If you're going to trade half your roster for him to make sure the money's correct, are you going to assume that you're going to be able to win a championship with Jimmy Butler, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis, and then basically 9 probably G League players? I don't know if that's going to make sense. But then I started thinking, what about Dallas? What if Dallas went after Jimmy Butler and said, screw it, let's go and try to win this mother? You obviously have seen Kyrie Irving play with another dominant guard. He's done it twice. And the NBA is a positionless league these days. I'll ask you guys a question. If you take out a couple of players from Dallas's team last year, let's just say, I'm just throwing this out there. Let's just say Lively and a couple of their really young players get traded with whatever draft assets they can throw Miami's way. And let's say that happened last year and you have Jimmy Butler with Kyrie and Doncic. Do you think they win it all?
And to clarify for somebody else that's going to say, "Oh, you're talking about trading Lively." We're talking about last year when he was still unproven.
I'm using it as just a hypothetical. It's not even a hypothetical. It's something that'll never happen, right?
Yeah, talk about last year.
Yeah, so we're talking about. Let's just kind of look back and say, what if that particular team, which is the Dallas team, which is pretty much the same team coming back this year, and no one's really old on this team, right? No one's really that old. So let's say they go Lively, Gafford, and 3 first-round picks. Let's just throw that out there. I actually think Miami would do that in a minute. Matter of fact, I think Dallas might be able to just throw 2 in there.
Well, I think they're getting tired, and as far as Riley, I think they're getting tired of Jimmy Butler's act in Miami.
Most of the teams that Jimmy's been with have. He's got a Randy Moss thing to him. Not as bad as Randy's, but he has this. At some point, actually, it's not even Randy Moss. It's more like a Jim Harbaugh.
It's like McDonald's French fries. There's a limited lifespan to them before they go really. Before it goes really stale.
Probably, yeah. I would say I was going to say In-N-Out Burger.
McDonald's is faster.
I think In-N-Out Burger. I actually don't. I don't order the fries unless I'm eating there.
Good point. Very good point.
Those fries get to the house, if somebody's getting
they're dead. They're dead.
Yeah. At least the McDonald's one they're they got enough fake food in there that make you addicted to it. It tastes good. The In-N-Out Burger fries are real potatoes. They cut it right there in front of you, and you have to eat them right out of the grill almost. But going back to the Dallas thing, if you have that third guy, because Kyrie came up so short. Kyrie looked like James Harden in the 2012 finals. He was abysmal. It was so bad when I was watching him play. I didn't even know he was playing sometimes. I seriously forgot Kyrie was playing in the game. So if you have that third guy and that particular dynamic, I think you probably are able to kind of maybe turn the corner a little bit because you have another threat there and someone who's seasoned in that moment too on top of it. So I would say Jimmy Butler and Dallas is something that I would look at. Is it likely? If I'm Dallas, I wouldn't. unless I was really desperate and thinking I could win a championship next year. If you're like, we know we can win next year if we had just one more guy that was seasoned and had the skill set to score and be that guy, then sure, why not go after it? But if they want to build something with Lively and Gafford and Washington and Doncic, and Kyrie, I think still has another 3-4 years left in him. Hell, you know what? Give it another shot. That's probably the smart move. But I don't know where else Jimmy could go where someone would really need him. It would be a desperate move or something where you'd have to have some immediate return, and the immediate return would be winning it all.
Well, I saw in the chat Orlando as a possibility, and I thought that wasn't too bad.
Orlando with Jimmy. I'm sorry, I wouldn't.
They need offense there in Orlando. And
they do, but the problem I think with that, or what I would find with that, is you brought in KCP, so your guard is set. You already play Paolo and Franz off of the wings, and you're kind of it would just get crowded. I feel like
unless you make Paolo the 5.
No, I don't. I think he has to. Yeah, sorry.
Zion may be the 5 in New Orleans, so everybody might be going smaller 5s.
Bad face there, but the reason I make it is, I mean, Paolo at this point in time is the scorer in Orlando. And I don't think it's a good idea to put him at the 5 to do that. It's an intriguing idea, but I just don't think. I think it would get too crowded, and the starting lineup would look weird. Okay. I think there's better options for it. I would say about the Dallas thing that Joe said. I think it makes them, a really big contender in the West. In fact, I think they can get out of the West into the finals with that fairly easily. They can knock off a young Minnesota team still, a young OKC team still. I think this would be a good series, but I think they could knock them off potentially still. My one thing, I don't, if you do the trade you said, and Joe, I knew you just kind of like threw this out to the wind, but it was the Gafford Lively 3 first-rounders. Would you have to play Maxey at the center then?
Probably
going forward. Yeah. And that I think is where you'd find trouble against,
watch out for Frank if he listens to this.
It's a terrible trade. It's a terrible trade. And I don't think they would demand 3. I think Pat would take 2. It would be a terrible trade unless Dallas wins in 2025.
Right.
It would be we got to get it now, because I don't know where Doncic's mind is right now. I don't know if he's going to turn into a Darren Williams. Darren Williams looked like the best, or at least a top 2 point guard for like 6 years. And that guy was going to the Hall of Fame probably if he had played 2 or 3 more years like that. And then all of a sudden he just dropped. And looking and reading about Luka's habits, if you will, who's to say that he might not be that guy? It happens in the NBA. Guys drop off. And you might want to, you might not want to hedge your bets. You might want to throw it all in and see if you can get another championship.
Right.
I think they overplayed last year and got to the finals and then got smoked when it because I don't think they really technically belong there. But they would have a chance to win it all next year if, let's say, Jimmy's healthy, because he's going to be motivated. And I think a lot of the reasons why he's kind of acting up right now is because he knows that Miami isn't really competing. He knows they don't have a chance to win it all. And that tends to kind of create this. I think that's where a lot of this kind of deviant behavior comes from too. So in Dallas, I don't think he'd have that. He would know that, hey, this team is going to compete, and they can compete for a title, and this is where we're at.
Once again, it is, of course, Joe Soro, Alfred Esmond, and me, Gerald Glassford. Thanks again for watching this thing. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already to go ahead and get the latest notifications right here at the Lakers Fast Break. So, Alfred, what other team do you have on your list of teams with interesting position battles?
Well, I saw, who was it? M-Easy bring them up in the chat, and we talked about them for a brief second. I would be remiss if I didn't mention them while I was on here. It's going to be the Orlando Magic for just a sec. The big key, you bring in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, your lineup of Jalen Suggs, KCP, Franz Wagner, Paolo, and Wendell Carter, pretty much set in place at this point in time. You go to the second unit, and I think you have a lot of questions what the initial guards you could throw out there. The three in the group I consider in this are Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and Anthony Black. You got some of Anthony Black a year ago when the team was unhealthy. He looked like his shot started coming around. You know you're going to get solid defense out of him. That's pretty much for every player on Orlando. You're going to get solid defense out of them. You know, and you saw what he can do. You have a seasoned veteran in Gary Harris, whose shot is on at times, but sometimes it's not as much. I'm not the biggest Gary Harris fan as much, but that's just another name to throw out there. And then you have Cole Anthony, who seemingly is the sixth man of this team for the time being. You're going to get, good guard play out of him. You trust him to take the ball up and down the floor. So I think it's going to be interesting for Jamal Mosley.
Black coming on.
Right. Then it's all of a sudden it's like, what are you going to do? Because he's a lottery pick. So it's like, you got to find a way where he can fit. So Jamal Mosley.
Two that are just sitting back there on the bench. Or is Silver 3? Or was still Silva a little bit down?
He was a little bit down the road.
Okay, but you have two that you haven't played as of yet.
Right. So that's the interesting part in that is I think you really, if you look at it as a full second unit compared to the starting lineup, you can go Anthony and then Black. So Cole Anthony and then Anthony Black, just to clarify. Tristan Da Silva, Jonathan Isaac, I think you'd have to take off the bench in the second unit just because he's a defensive monster when it's like small increment amount of minutes. And then you go beyond that, you can do Mo Wagner, who I love to death. I think he's a great bench player as well. But that's the interesting part, I think, for Jamal Mosley is going to be those three guards I mentioned initially and how they'll fit in. Because you also have another guard. They signed Corey Joseph for what it's worth. That's like another guard to add to the depth and the rotation of your squad. So the guard room, once again, it's not as crowded because you got Fultz out of the equation and Joe Ingles, but it's still just a little packed. So you kind of need to look at what you have there, and in particular with those three guards I mentioned beyond Suggs and KCP in Orlando.
So funny that he just got signed now or within the past 24 hours. Was it Fultz or no? Is he still a free agent out there?
Let me look to make sure.
I think he might still be a free agent because Okoro just got signed to the contract. But
who are you talking to? Who are you talking about?
Markelle Fultz. From a number one pick to nobody wants.
Unsigned.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything that he's been signed.
Okay. Yeah. So
right.
Yeah, not even 30 yet, and he's already out of the league. So that's
insane. Former number one overall pick too. That is so crazy.
The tragedy about that pick isn't so much him being a bust. That's happened in the NBA.
Right.
The tragedy is Boston got the best player in that draft while giving their enemy that pick. That was the tragedy. They got Jason Tatum for Fultz by giving the Sixers the first pick.
I mean, so much for the process.
I mean, seriously, it kind of reminds me of something I've been wanting to talk about, but it's not that important. But since you guys kind of brought it up, the two players that I think about a lot, and sometimes, look, I if there's any advice I can give anybody in life, okay, forget about politics, forget about religion, forget about family, friends, all that. I'm talking about just you. Go with your gut. You're gonna be right way more than you're not when you do that. And my gut told me, both with Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz, I'm like, these two guys are supposed to be the best players in the country. Guys, you have any idea how big America is? You know how many basketball players there are? And these guys were the first picks. Yet these guys couldn't take their teams anywhere. And look at the result. Pay attention, folks. You know, basketball might be the most individualized team sport, but it's still a team sport. And folks, when you're having your greatest of all time discussions every 5 minutes because you can't find anything relevant to talk about, LeBron needed help to win. Kobe needed help to win. Shaq needed help to win. Jordan needed help. This is a team sport. And sometimes you need the perfect help to win. Sometimes having okay help isn't enough. And when you look at Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons, the cautionary tale in those two things is, do these guys lead? Could they lead in the smallest areas? They couldn't. And now look at the result when it became the big area. And that will happen 99% of the time. You will never, hardly ever see someone that talented and that horrible in the team aspect and see them be an all-time great or even very, very good in a league where it's at its peak, which is the NBA.
That's sad. Not even a training camp
Yeah.
deal. That's
Yeah,
really sad.
it's wild. And I understand. I mean, he did not play like a first overall pick by any stretch of the imagination, but I liked him when he was in Orlando as a guy to come off of the bench and give the main starters rest. That's just what he's become, and he was good at it. And I'm surprised there's teams out there who aren't even taking the chance on a training camp invite for that in the slightest. I mean, there's got to be teams out there who have like unproven, like nothing in their guard room, and that would take a chance on him. It's just hard to believe. It's sad. And yeah, I mean, it's quite crazy that it's come to that point.
The backup guards for the Lakers right now are, of course, Gabe Vincent, as far as point guards are concerned, and Jordan Goodwin. I think those are options. Oh, and Jalen Hood-Schifino. So I'm sorry. I would at least take a flyer and see what's there. And if there's anything there, he at least tempo-wise, Fultz, if he's healthy, tempo-wise, he would get you what you need to get as far as an up-tempo game there. But you're right. Shooting, just never developed. And so it is what it is. But I did want to go ahead and say it is, of course, Alfred Esmond and Joe Soro with me. Joe, is there any other training camp battles coming up here? Because training camp is around the corner for some teams sooner rather than later. And remember,
when you're saying battle, what in what context?
Position battles or position, is there like for starting spots or rotation spots? Questions that you think need to be answered in training camp for one of these teams?
Honestly, the basketball right now for any contender is things are set already before you even go in. I mean, you could say maybe is Paul George in Philly going to take a lot of Maxi's shots? Is Maxi going to be okay with that? That is something to look at, by the way, folks. If Maxi is cool with sharing the ball, it's going to benefit everyone. And Paul George, as much of a, Clipper brain as he is, I'm just saying a nice word there with it, because I was a big Paul George fan. I thought he'd be a Laker before his career was over, and it's unfortunate that it didn't happen. But anyways, if Paul George can play with Maxi and Maxi can play with Paul George, now the pressure is going to be off each. The likelihood of injuries isn't going to be as heavy. And then, of course, that's also going to benefit Joel Embiid. Those are the things. And I feel very comfortable with who is the leader there, which is Nick Nurse. That's why I'm looking at Philly right now and saying Philly has the ingredients to possibly make a run. Health is going to be the big thing, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, if they're healthy going into the playoffs, that team could get to the finals.
I think.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Joe, I think they can win it. I mean,
absolutely, they could win it. Yes.
I mean, the key is health, because like I said when I was talking about them for a brief sec, I mean, beyond Joel Embiid is Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond at this point in his career is not going to, deliver as much as he needs to at the 5 to carry you to that point. But if they're healthy, they can take down Boston. I think they can win it all. They have the ingredients for it. So I think it's like you said, I like the shot sharing thing with Maxi and Paul George. Obviously, is going to be key how they split those up. I think you continue to feed through Embiid as much as you can as well. And like I said, you look down the depth chart. Jared McCain fitting in. How will he fit into a team that can go as far as we think they can? You got Ricky Council in there for good defense as well. It's interesting to see what Eric Gordon can do. You have KJ Martin off the bench as well. They're an interesting team to look at. And I think I think if there's any team where health is, crucial, it's Philly. We saw that last year with what happened toward the end, and it kind of derailed anything they had and any chance of anybody really taking down Boston in the East, in my honest opinion. So it's just, that's going to be key going forward. And I like what you said. I think they can win it all flat out if they stay healthy.
I'm not worried about Embiid during the regular season, guys. It's what is he like going into the playoffs? That's the thing, because each and every playoffs, he's already broken down, gets hurt, physically unable to meet up to the standards needed in the playoffs. He'll give you like one spectacular game, then just like look like he's exhausted and can't even make it through the other games, which is part of the reason why Philly didn't make it any further in the playoffs last season. So how Embiid is dealt with during the course of the season and how physically ready to play at the end of the season, I think is going to be a key for them, Joe.
Yeah, a lot of the reasons why he is tired at the end of the year is because he has to shoulder a lot of the scoring load. And someone like Paul George will allow him not to have to expend that much energy. I'm curious to see, and I'm going to guess he's going to probably play ball here. If I'm Nick Nurse, he's probably sitting Embiid down or sat with him already. Again, this is completely hypothetical. I'm just saying this is a story. I'm sitting down with him and I'm saying, Joel, you've come up tired and injured the last few years, and you haven't yet gotten to an Eastern Conference final. We have some money, and we want to go get Paul George. Cool. He's, Joel Embiid's probably like, hell yeah, let's do it. And if I'm Nick Nurse, right after that, I'm like, well, Joel, if we do this, it's not likely you're ever going to win another MVP. Are you okay with that? Because we need you at the end, and this guy will help you do that. And of course, Maxey would be right next to Joel, because that's how you're supposed to do it, folks. These guys are your two guys. They're your pillars. And they should be at least communicated with when you're bringing in someone like Paul George. And maybe for all we know, those guys were, campaigning with them, But that's how I would explain the story. And if those guys are on board, and every team is always based off of injury anyways, right? So that's just par for the course. But man, if Maxey and Embiid understand their roles at this point, and you have a very, very good coach in Nick Nurse, I don't see how these guys aren't going to be scary. And the way the NBA is right now, it's very difficult to repeat, not just because things are starting to spread out, because certain people are leaving. That's part of it. But the NBA, this is still funny to me. The NBA players were complaining about too many games, and the NBA accommodated them with adding more games.
Which I think is hilarious, because it's been 82 games for how many years now?
It's been a while. I have to check that, actually. That's a good
decades, question. I think is the term. 82 games has been for quite a while in the league. So it's not like they just did this yesterday. Like, for instance, the NFL, 16 games, which is now, I know it's now more, but 16 games, it's been in NFL for years and
16,
years.
I do know when they went 16 in the NFL. It was 1978.
So that's decades. The same thing with the NBA. It's been decades since they've gone to an 82 game season.
I'll check that, guys. While you guys ask the next question to Alfred, I'll look at that.
Sounds good. Once again, it is Alfred Esmond and Joe Soro. It is me, Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for listening. If you have not yet liked and subscribed, please do so. Leave a comment below. You guys on our last video left a ton of comments, which I'm greatly appreciative of, which always helps out the algorithm right here at the Lakers Fast Break. But Alfred, I think a team that you may have not put on your comments, I have to look back at it, but they have a different reason for some position battles, and that is in Portland. Because they've got talent there, but they've also don't want to win. They want to tank.
Right.
So what do you do in trying to develop a Donovan Clingan when you should be starting him, but you can't because you got a DeAndre Ayton and a Time Lord right there with him? So what do you do about that? And people want to trade for Williams, but they're not sure about Williams' knees. You talk about the guard situation and the wings. Are you going to commit to Henderson and Simons? Do they all fit with each other? Are they too small? Sharp, is he going to be the small forward for your future? And then, of course, Grant, who's been on every Lakers trade rumor this whole summer with that amazingly bad contract. It is a bad contract. I don't care what new TV deal it is. It is still a
Yeah,
bad contract.
it's bad.
Your thoughts on the mess right now? Very intriguing, though, what may happen in Portland. A team that looks like it should be going in one direction, but may have enough competent players to keep them from doing that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll start with Anthony Simons. I mean, he was good enough to where teams like, I know Orlando on Twitter, that those fans are all over him, to come to Orlando. Obviously, they got KCP instead, but he was probably the next popular name for it. You bring in, if you're Portland, I don't really understand bringing in Denny either. I mean, I think Denny has a role on that team enough to where he can really produce and contribute. Honestly, him and Sharp could battle for that 3 spot come this season. And I think that'll be a training camp battle to watch out for with them. You draft Donovan Clingan when you have, like you said, Gerald, when you have DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams already there. I don't really know what you're going to do with that. I mean, Clingan's a top 10 pick. That's a reason to start him initially, but you're not going to do that over Ayton when you're giving Ayton a lump sum of money. It's a big mess. And then honestly, you go down the line of their depth beyond their second unit, which has, let's say hypothetically Clingan, Sharp or Denny, whichever one you decide to start. And then that's really
that
it.
ought to be a trade. I don't know why they did that trade. What is the purpose that served for Portland?
And we talked about this last time. They gave up draft capital when you need that, and that's what you want. I don't understand it at all. So I think if we're just looking at battles though with that team, I think the Denny and Sharp battle for the 3 spots interesting. If one gets it, the other's going to be, I think, the 6th man, quite honestly, on that team, unless Clingan is as well. But and then the centers, I mean, Clingan, Ayton, Williams, depending on what's going on with him, I don't really know how you figure all that out either. So it's a mess. They don't really have a lot of depth. I mean, the only names that are recognizable to me are Matisse Thybulle and Devontae Graham. And beyond that, that's all you have if you go deep into their rotation. So it's a mess. And I mean, unless you have your 5 starters or first 6 or 7 completely going off, you're not going to win a lot of games, I think, which can play into their favor of what they want. But also you just have all this, you're kind of like holding, a bunch of gold near you in the middle of a trash dump, so to speak, that other teams are kind of looking at and wanting. And you're like, yeah, we'll give you, this, or we'll take that guy and give you a bunch of draft capital back instead. So they have the pieces, I think, initially to start to create something, but it's probably the weirdest, team when it comes to looking at who they have and what's going on in training camp. But again, if you want to focus on battles, the Denny Sharp thing is key. And then obviously their center room is just loaded, with a bunch of pretty good players. One, they're paying a ton. A guy you drafted top 10 overall, and then Robert Williams, who has shown flashes here and there. So it's just a lot of stuff to evaluate for them. They probably are going to have the busiest training camp out of anybody when it comes to this sort of thing.
Before we get to another team like that, which I wanted to touch on, which could be interesting during trade season, Jeremy in our chat, I wanted to go ahead and pop a suggestion that he had, and then also get back to yours. Joe, before I do, Joe, did you come up with the first time or how many years that they've been playing 82 games?
Yes, it started in the 1967-68 season.
So the answer is it's not like this happened last week that they've been
Forever.
playing 82 games. Yeah.
The only thing that's
older than me, to give everybody an idea.
We've discussed this on the show several times. The NBA, I feel like, are very lazy in creating a better schedule. And a better schedule, especially with the resources that you have now versus what you might have had then, is they could have you could make the regular season more regional. You can make the divisions matter more a little bit. But instead, all they did was just add more games because they're greedy assholes. And in the end, it's just, I hate to keep saying, it's all about the money and greed, but it's also just complete stupidity, because you get a better product if you just help out a little bit and stop being so damn greedy. But they won't risk it. And this is where it is. And what I mean by helping out the, I guess, viewership and maybe the players is make the teams in their division play more. Therefore, their flights are shorter. The division, when we watch teams play all the time, we get sick of the other team. Doesn't matter if it's preseason, regular season, playoffs. You build a disdain when you keep seeing the same team. Just like when they talk about when they play during the training camps, they're like, "Oh, we've been playing against each other for 10 games. We're tired. We want to go play somebody else." It's the same thing here. So imagine playing Phoenix 6 or 8 times a year, and you got guys like Devin Booker who have a punchable face, and you have Bradley Beal who's never there. Like it creates that tension, and then you're allowing, let's say, the Lakers. I'm just using the Lakers as an example here. You're letting them just fly. It's a puddle jump in terms of flight. You're not flying from LA to Milwaukee late at night. It's all kind of local, and that takes a toll on you. Going on a back-to-back, having to fly to Milwaukee. Again, I'm basing this off the pansy-ass league and how they've gotten paid more money than anybody that's ever been paid in the history of sports, yet they're still crying and whining about being tired, right? Okay, indulge us. Just keep it at 82 games because we don't want the records to be compromised. But play more regional. Make the divisions matter. And get rid of the stupid tournaments and the stupid play-ins. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't go that route, but maybe they just don't care. Maybe they just want more games.
And more money.
Yeah.
I think they get more money in the long run. See, people don't want to work at making the money the right way. They just want to get it quick and go. And I'm like sitting to myself, I'm like, most of these guys are all in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like, where are you going to go with this money? Where? Were you going to take it to purgatory or hell, which is probably where you're going? Where are you going to take this money? How about helping the league? How about helping the players and their soft ass or something, or making it more appealing? No. If your decisions are always solely on money, you're always going to get a shitty product. Now, by me saying that, it doesn't really matter because the ratings are up. They're making their money. Nothing I say really makes sense because people are still watching and they're still giving them their money. So it is what it is.
Once again, it is the Lakers Fast Break. It is Alfred Esmond on Twitter, and then Joe Soro, Simblades, and of course, LakersBall.com. Joe, Jeremy, I am going to take your request. Before we get back to your list, Alfred, the Grizz, a team which is expected to bounce back because they've got their players healthy and the chaotic season that was a year ago. John Morant, hopefully he's not going to post any more Instagram videos anytime soon with any firearms. Yeah, that didn't go over well. And then he had the injury. And then, of course, they had more injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were the walking wounded. I will say, even though they have started their season with another injury in Gigi Jackson, the fact is they got a chance to develop some young players. And if they develop a certain center in Zach Edey the right way, they could be looking to rebound and then make themselves a player once again in the Western Conference. But what position battles do you really look at with them?
Yeah, not necessarily a battle, but one thing to look at for training camp, which I think they're going to enjoy a lot. They needed a center this draft. I think that was pretty much no secret to anybody, and I don't mean Jaren Jackson Jr. They needed a center this draft, and they got it with Zach Edey. I think finding a way to fit him in with Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be really cool for them. I think it's a pretty good fit if they can make it work the right way. I think offensively, if you can work a pick and roll in between John Morant and Zach Edey, that's going to be pretty fun to watch for a lot of Grizzlies fans and people around the NBA. So Zach Edey's role in fitting into this team as being a starting center is going to be found out during this training camp. And I think it's perfect, because I think they had times where when he was healthy, Jaren Jackson Jr. was running the center and everything within the paint for Memphis. And that's taxing, even on a guy who's as athletic and good around the rim as he is. They bring in Edey, who, is, say what you want about him. It's a polarizing player you bring in at the center spot. So I think that's going to be really interesting to watch, to see what he can do. The other thing as well, I think with Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard, you just figuring out where they are as well. I think Marcus Smart is a good 2 at this point. I guess maybe with Luke Kennard, you can run him at the 3 if you want more 3-point shooting or something like that. But if you're confident with Desmond Bane, you go that route. That's another battle I can see fit. If that happens, like I said, I think Kennard can run in at the second unit, that sort of thing. You have some intriguing people down the stretch here. Gigi Jackson when he's healthy. Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark as well is another name we haven't mentioned, who can give you some depth at the big man, at down low with the big men. They're a very good. They're a very intriguing team, and if they're healthy, I think they're somewhere within the playoffs, whether it's the play-in or a top 8, whatever. They're going to be playing playoff basketball if they stay healthy and can make this thing work. I think the biggest thing is finding out how Zach Edey fits into this entire team, which I think was fit-wise one of the best picks in this first round we had.
Weren't they 2 seasons ago a number 2 seed?
They were, yeah.
That the Lakers upset them, yeah. So There you go.
So yeah,
yes,
I think
Frederick. Yeah, they waived Blake Hinson. Yes, we mentioned that earlier in the show to sign Christian Coloco to a 2-way. Appreciate the update, but yeah, don't mind at all you putting that in the chat. What's up, Joe?
I was gonna say yes. If there was a place Zach had to go, was probably Memphis.
If he gets you Zubac's numbers, 12 and 10,
well,
in a rookie year, that could really
more important than that is it's going to, again, this business of the NBA is about keeping yourself fresh. It's the speed of the game, the skill set of the game has created a speed that's just not sustainable, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And no one is training for it. So when you're playing 7 seconds ball and shoot, basically Mike D'Antoni's dream league is right now. This is the Mike D'Antoni dream. And you just don't have just a Steve Nash doing it, right? You have a bunch of guys that are just shooting, running, shooting, running, shooting, running, shooting. It's all fast paced. It's all quick. And where Zach's going to play a big part is he's going to allow Triple J, to not have to burden everything. You won't have to be the guy that has to handle everything, much like how Anthony Davis has to handle everything. And in certain matchups, he's going to be able to play well. But there's also going to be a lot of matchups where he will not be good. And that is when they spread him out. He is going to have to really go into that Brook Lopez mode at some point. Brook Lopez, when I talk about surprising talent that I've seen in the last decade, it's Brook Lopez. In a billion years, if you'd sat me down and said, this guy's going to be second in Defensive Player of the Year, and he's going to start hitting threes left and right consistently all year, I would have sat down and I would have been on the Lakers fast break and I would have called you out. And guess what would have happened? I would have had egg, crow, avocado in my face. That is one of the most surprising players I've ever seen in the NBA. I've never seen someone who couldn't rebound turn into a defensive stalwart and all of a sudden start hitting shots from distance like he's Jamal Wilkes. It was pretty crazy. So Zach Edey, we don't think he's suited for the NBA right now, but if he has a Brook Lopez situation where he can train himself and get better at shooting and playing defense, and he can, then our observation of him would change. But we're basing the observation of Zach Edey off of the other thousands of players that have not been able to. But nonetheless, you're also going to have someone that's going to be there, that's going to take up minutes. And there are going to be some half court type offenses. You're going to have a lot of bigs that you can put him on, that he will be an asset. And the only other team besides Memphis that he would have been perfect for would have been LA.
That is something as far as his outside shooting. I think that'll work out over time, whether or not he does become a stretch. But right away, he can get you 12 and 10 or 12 and 8, 12 and 10, 13, just something in that range right away on 50% shooting, because he'll be shooting a lot of stuff close up, and running pick and rolls with Ja is obviously going to be a big thing for him. But Alfred, is there any other teams on your list that we need to target?
I'm trying to think of anyone else. I'm going to go a different route. This team, I think, for a lot of people is not too interesting to look at, obviously, but I like giving the smaller teams who aren't as good some love. I'm just going to talk about the Wizards briefly. Obviously,
that's the team I had in mind.
Yeah. Obviously, this is a totally different situation. This is a team where they're evaluating quite literally everything they have. They bring in Jonas Valanciunas for the center spot. I like that with Alex Sarr, just as a kind of two big man's thing. You have a veteran who he can learn from while playing down there with them. I think it can be pretty polarizing. It's not earth shattering, as a whole.
And that's something I'll ask you and Joe, because I got a letter on that earlier today from Rodell saying that Joe and I were crazy for thinking that Jonas Valanciunas will be yielding or fetching a first-round draft pick come trade time. So your thoughts, Alfred? How long will it be before he is traded? Because, again, he was signed with Washington with full knowledge he is not going to be staying his entire tenure there.
Mm-hmm.
And would he be traded for a first-round pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they're – I honestly would not rule it out of the realm of possibilities. I think it's very likely. And I think two keys to that are, one, are you going to be a lottery team with good odds? Yes, they are. And then two, how does Alex Sarr look? I think if Alex Sarr is horrifically bad and not working out, you have to keep him there for a little longer to help him out. Just me, just how I would look at it.
15 games.
Right. It's not like Summer League Alex Sarr. But if Alex Sarr is starting to produce like I think he can and will, I think that gives you an excuse to ship out Valanciunas for draft capital, which is what you desperately need at this point. So that is a good point. I do think that's a possibility. But if you look beyond him, you don't really have a lot at the big man positions. Patrick Baldwin Jr., Marvin Bagley, Rashawn Holmes is the other one. You don't really have a ton there, to look at big man wise. So that's going to be key, seeing how those two play amongst each other. I guess going through the other positions,
their point guards are going to be interesting. How quickly they can unload both those point guards that they have.
Right. Yeah. And then beyond them too, I think Bub Carey and Corey Kispert splitting. How do you split their minutes up?
Well, that's because that's the reason why they want to get rid of the older two point guards that they have on there, so they can give Bub more time, because they feel Bub might be the way to go.
Right. And Kispert, I love Kispert's shooting too, so you can go with him as well. And there's a point. It might come to a head this season where he's a better shooting option than Jordan Poole, in all realness. So if you want to go that route, you could ship Poole out somewhere to wherever you want to get him for draft capital, that sort of thing. So I think training camp, though, if you look at Washington, you're kind of going to look at how Sarr and Valanciunas will fit amongst each other. I think the minutes initially, when you have Brogdon and Poole there, along with Kispert and Bub behind them, is going to be key to see what they can do or where they actually end up. And those are the two key things with them. Again, this is a team that it's not like the other teams we've talked about. This is we have to evaluate what we have and roll with it. And that's, I think, the major training camp points that they're going to do, or that they're going to look at.
Joe, any thoughts on the Washington Wizards? Alfred and I were on the same wavelength. Again, for me, it was because we got that nasty letter from Rodell saying that Jonas Valanciunas will not yield a first-round draft pick in a trade. That doesn't matter where in the first round, just will not. Thinks we're crazy that Jonas Valanciunas, with the type of need that there is out there for centers in the NBA, if he plays competently around December, January, will not be starting to get those rumors in regards to that, Joe.
So my question for that is, if he can't fetch a first-round pick, then what would be the point of Washington moving him.
Because that's what Washington
Right.
did to sign him, because they had no real need to sign him because they're trying to tank.
So what would so let's speak logically here. I'm asking anybody this question. What is the point of trading Valanciunas if you're not getting at least a first round pick if you're Washington? I'm just talking about Valanciunas. It doesn't matter. Package with Kuzma or Poole or Sar. I'm not looking at that. Just Valanciunas. I thought so. I heard
Right.
dead air. Thank you. You guys answered my question.
Well, that's why he signed with Washington, because he got the third year
Look, folks,
guaranteed.
Look, Rodell lives in a. I always have to give him credit because I just love this quote. Adam Shine, he has a show on Sirius XM Radio. He's big in the Northeast, right? He calls it Planet Delusional, and I believe that Rodell is. I would say he is maybe the president of Planet. You can't have a president of the world. Let's say he's Genghis Khan of before civilization kind of got right. He is Genghis Khan of Planet Delusional, and I think it's time for you to wake up, Rodell. I don't think you really understand how things work. Having an opinion is entitled to everyone, but when you come out with things that make no sense, regardless if it's your thoughts or opinion, you have to at least back it up with something of substance. But it just doesn't seem like there's anything there sometimes. And Washington, I don't.
There you go, Alan. Alan got it. The warlord of Planet Delusional.
And, that's kind of a compliment because he probably wouldn't be a warlord. He wouldn't last maybe 5 minutes being a warlord, right? He'd be a minion. But I was trying to be kind of complimentary, but again, I'm not. I can't do it too long. The Washington situation, and the reason why this is kind of an important subject for the Lakers is Washington seems to be the friendliest team towards Rob Pelinka. And we may have to rely on them later. The question, though, is who and what? Are the Lakers going to be able to get something there of substance where it could kind of take them to where they need to go? The question there is I don't know, because it would depend on what they give up. And unfortunately, they don't have a lot to give up either. So it's going to be very difficult. It's going to depend on how certain guys play. And are those certain guys who play above what we think they're going to play, are they going to be part of a package to go get someone that's better than them? It's a lot of working parts here. And we're just at that place where it's just too hard because there's too many variables.
I just think, again, when it comes to Washington, guys, they signed Jonas Valanciunas. They gave him that full 3-year contract guaranteed for a reason, with the full intention of trading him. There is no way they did it because they wanted their team to be better, because they're in the midst of tanking. So you do that for a purpose, whether it's to, meet salary cap requirements or just the fact that you want to use him as an asset. And if he plays anywhere near competently this season, like he's done the past few seasons, all he has to do is just show himself off to the rest of the league. And like Joe says, somebody will bite. Somebody will bite if needed. Injuries will happen. And if he stays healthy and upright, December, January, he will be out there and he'll be a name that's tossed around and bandied a bit. So Washington is obviously one that we're going to take a look at. And then, of course, all the youth on that roster in Washington. How are these guys going to get a chance to play with Bilal? Getting a chance, needing a chance to play. He needs to develop his game. He could be something, but we don't know yet. And of course, like you mentioned with Sar is going to need some burn too. So Sar's development early on will be a key on how soon they can go ahead and start thinking about dealing Jonas Valanciunas, but we'll see. But Alfred or Joe, I'll hit it up with you, Joe. Any other team that have positional battles that you think might be interesting this training camp?
Honestly, I haven't, other than the teams we've talked about, there isn't much that I can. This is probably one of the off seasons where I haven't been able to really look at everything. I've been so maybe distraught by the Lakers situation. I haven't been wanting to look at anything else. I have a good memory on things. I do pay attention to a few things here and there. Of course, when we're doing a show, you have to prepare. A lot of people don't know that, but even when you're coming impromptu, again, I was taught by a very good mentor. His name is John Chalesnik. Used to work for ESPN. Runs a great company right now that helps young broadcasters get jobs all across the country. And one of the things he taught me in the few years I learned under his teaching is Joe, you always have to be prepared for what might come up. That means you could prepare for a show, and then Tom Brady might tear up his knee, which happened in 2008. And now you're talking about Tom Brady's knee. Before, you were about to talk about that particular week, which was week 1. But then Tom Brady takes precedent because he's Tom Brady. And it's no different than, coming on the show today, which I didn't know you guys were going to come on, and not be really prepared, but you're also prepared because you prepare for these moments that it might be impromptu. And again, it does help that I have a memory to it. Sports is easy for me. Sports sticks in my head. I don't have to watch football, every single football game, to really know certain things. I'll see sometimes a highlight. Sometimes I'll see a game for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll already kind of know what's going on.
M-Easy is talking about Hood Schifino versus Bronny. Are we talking about South Bay Lakers position battle or the Los Angeles Lakers? I'm not quite sure, because that sounds to me more like South
Let's throw
Bay
them a bone. Let's throw them a bone here, okay? JHS will kill Bronny. That's what Jeremy says. The only issue with that statement, Jeremy, is JHS can barely stand, let alone kill anybody. So
coming off of back surgery, and he couldn't shoot, and he couldn't defend last year.
If you're talking about a healthy JHS, which I think won't happen for another year, back surgeries, folks, I've never had them, but anyone that I've talked to, those things destroy you. And the fact that he's young, maybe that might help him heal quicker. I don't know. But JHS is a bust in the NBA, but he's still better than Bronny.
And they can't waive Bronny because they signed him to a 3+1 guaranteed contract. So they would have to eat the contract even if they waived and stretched out for years on end. So
and they'd have to eat whatever Clutch feeds down Ginny's mouth.
Yeah, wow.
For doing that.
Be that as it may, Alfred, any other teams before we head on out? I'm going to see if I can get Legend to come on tomorrow, and maybe we can do this more, because I know he'll have some teams in mind. But any other position battles of interest to you before we head on out, my friend?
No, I think we got into a bunch. I'll let you and Legend, break down a few new ones too, along with mine, just for tomorrow's sake and stuff. I just thought of this because, Joe, you were talking about Brook Lopez and how much of a surprise he was for you. He was so surprising. He's actually the all-time leading scorer in Nets history. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but that's a tidbit I was looking at while I was looking at Brook Lopez stuff. So I'll leave the audience with that today as the last little tidbit.
Milwaukee was one that was mentioned early on in the chat.
Milwaukee. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think with them. Well, I think they kind of were let down a little because of last season. They obviously are a team that looks to contend at the top of the East with having Giannis and whatnot, obviously. And looking at them and their battles, I guess if I go down the list here, you have your starting lineup pretty much set. I guess Pat Connaughton, DeLone Wright, Gary Trent. I don't know how you'd look at that for depth at your guard spot. You look down the list. I think Bobby Portis is your big man off the bench, the first one, obviously. They have Taurean Prince in the mix, so that's going to be key as well. Beauchamp, Marjon Beauchamp's another one out there. I think you could do Beauchamp at the guard spot, possibly a 3, although I don't know for sure. ESPN has Taurean Prince starting, so I guess that 3 spot might.
Here we go. Yeah,
I know
that was on this show.
Oops.
That is probably not the words you want to say. Taurean Prince starting. Alan, Go ahead, Alan.
I cut the wrong wire there,
Yes.
defusing the bomb.
There
But
you go.
they have him there. So I guess that's the.
Well, I'll just say this. It's so funny
Okay.
because yesterday I did my daughter asked me to do one of those tiling things. You grade from A to F certain things, and we did like MCU, we did like Lord of the Rings. Do the Lakers roster last year, Gerald. And it's so funny because the problem is they had 2 A's and then everything else spaced itself out until you got to the F's and the ones that should be somewhere else. And it was just so funny because there was so many bad players on that team. And Prince, had he been just a reserve, Alfred, I don't think would have gotten the kind of heat that he would have gotten. But because Ham's insistence on starting him for so many games, really, it just left us Lakers fans with a bad taste in our mouths. I think he's still a rotational player in the league, and obviously he shot 38%, but he is not suited to start anymore in the NBA.
No, so actually, I'll take a lot of what I said back. I think that's
well. Alan said he's he's good with Prince now as long as he isn't on my team. So there you go.
Okay, thank goodness. But I mean, if the Bucks really want him at the 3 to start the year, that's fine. I think you have to look at other options, though. I don't know if you do. I don't know how you'd feel about this, Gerald. A Lillard, Middleton, Portis, Giannis, Lopez starting lineup. I think that kind of changes the way they play a little bit, especially with Dame Lillard and Middleton. But just beyond that, I mean, you can't. I don't think you can go too small either with Gary Trent at that spot. So that's going to be interesting how they handle the 3 position. I think will be the biggest thing with Milwaukee with the addition of Prince.
Okay. Well, as a 10th man, Alan, I don't think he would be that bad. I think
man.
You could do worse than
man.
Yes, he has a reserve.
That always sounds funny. That's funny.
I said as a reserve, Alan. I didn't say start him. Definitely don't want him starting again in the NBA. So yeah, if Milwaukee does start him, that would probably not. I could just hear Milwaukee fans for the entire season groaning there about Doc Rivers, but again, not our problem anymore. But it is the Lakers fast break. Alfred, it's always great to have you on. Joe, obviously, as well. Tomorrow, I'm going to see if I can line up Legend 350, and maybe Joe can stop by as well tomorrow as we continue our intriguing position battles and rotational battles throughout the league. But Alfred, please give everybody, yes, Easy. We didn't even mention in Houston as far as Smith Jr., Thompson. We were glowing about Cam Whitmore, which I know Rodell hates us doing so, but oh well. We like Cam Whitmore a lot here on the show because we thought he should have been on our team. But the whole lineup in Houston, because I said before, it's got so many options. Will 1 or 2 players take that next step? That's the question with Houston. But any last thoughts, or where can people find you before they head on out?
Yeah, so as you guys know, I've kind of moved on from fan-sided at this point. I'm currently part-time college baseball writing for a good amount of money now, which is nice, for World Baseball Network. That's the website. They also do MLB news. They actually cover international leagues. So the Japanese league, Korean leagues, which are really popular. And actually those games are really cool. You should watch one just to see how they treat it. It's pretty insane how they treat it over there. Caribbean leagues as well. The Mexican league, which Trevor Bauer and Robinson Cano just won with on their team. I know those are 2 kind of throwback names at this point, but they just won with their Mexican league team. We cover all that stuff, so go check them out over there. I'm doing SEC baseball podcasting with Southeastern 16 too. Even though I'm done with the NBA, you guys know I watch it pretty much just as much as anyone else would. I watch as much as I can, keep up with it as much as I can. I mean, I guess now I'm a former writer for Orlando Magic Daily, so I'll be watching them a ton just to see, just because I know that team like the back of my hand, and I'll just watch them constantly. Watch the Lakers as well, just to keep up with you guys and see how they're doing, and all that good stuff. So go ahead and check me out if you're baseball fans out there. I know a good amount of you are. Joe is. So
Emmy is asking, how good is this Japanese free agent pitcher?
Which one would that be? The
one from Stanford, I think we were talking about.
That's Rentaro Sasaki. He's a third baseman. He's really, really good. As far as, again, I do college baseball, so there's another one, Itsuke Takamoto for Hawaii. He's a 2-way player, so he's pretty intriguing as well. I think he batted like 313, had a 4-something ERA, so he's half decent as well. He's the new two-way prodigy now that Caglianone's gone from college. But yeah, Japan is producing, and I think the main reason why that this website covers it so much is Japan is producing so much baseball talent that it's overflowing into the college game, which is weird because usually those guys, they go pro in Japan and treat that as their minor league stint, and then they get signed with the MLB teams. Shohei is an example, the major example of that. But now these guys are like, hey, NIL money, college, so I'm going to go play in college for a year or two and see how it works out there. So that's what this Rentaro Sasaki guy's doing, and it's interesting stuff. So feel free to check that out. That's what I'm into now, and like I said, continuing to watch the NBA as much as I can and keep up with it as much as I can.
Great job as always, my friend. And Joe, appreciate on short notice you stopping by. Any last thoughts, Joe, before we head on out?
No.
Okay. And on that note, tomorrow I will try to catch up with Legend 350, to see if he has any thoughts. I'm leaving Golden State for him because he is a Golden State fan, and I think there's some intriguing battles there because they have a lot of players around the same level in their career, which might be interesting. And I know he'll probably talk about Atlanta and some of the other teams as well. So I leave that up to him, but we will be talking more intriguing NBA battles. Once again, for you Lakers fans, Christian Coloco, 7-footer, former second-round draft choice of the Toronto Raptors, has come to an agreement on a 2-way contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers have subsequently waived Blake Hinson. I think he will catch on somewhere on an Exhibit 10 and then get his opportunity in the G League. I think there's a possibility he could just chuck it up. He'll be a chuckster as far as chucking up a whole bunch of threes in the G League. So don't be surprised if you see him averaging 15 to 20 points in the game in the G League at some point in time real soon. Whether or not he can defend at the next level remains to be seen. But M, is Joe in the nude? No, he just has his camera off for some reason. Well, I don't know if he's in the nude or not, so that's up to him.
I wanted to give Alfred the shine tonight, folks.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
You know, for those of you who think that I'm self-absorbed, you're right. Except on the show.
And on that note, it is, of course, a Lakers Fast Break. Remember, you can become a member today for just $2.99 a month. That'll get you emojis, badges, and also big shout outs from me. Once again, I want to make sure we give a big shout out to our awesome members that are out there. Truly appreciate you doing so. It is, of course, Samir, JSJ, Kurt, Darren, Sports Baby, Richard, Bloodhound, and Xbox. If you want to become a member, it's just $2.99 a month. And of course, please like and subscribe to get the latest notifications on when we go live on the air with the latest Lakers Fast Break podcast.
You happy now, everyone?
I guess so.